Today's sales math topic is time, which I once heard defined as Mother Nature's way of making sure everything doesn't happen at once. But we want to take a little more detailed look at it, particularly as it relates to sales. So let's jump into it. There are a couple of things about time that we want to cover today. One are some of the ways that we encounter it, and the other is that we don't conceptualize it very well. So one of the first places it shows up for us is in our equation, activity times quality of the activity equals productivity. And what we added to that was over time. So activity and the quality of the activity are really about effectiveness, but if you can drive time down, that will be a positive lever on productivity. Here, we're really talking about efficiency. So here's effectiveness, here's efficiency, and the time we're talking about here is selling time. Now, one of the things that comes up often is everybody always talks about we have to reduce cycle time. And I think that's a bit of a misconception. And the reason is, if a deal is closing this week, we don't really care if it's been in the pipeline for 6 months or 6 weeks, as long as it's closing this week. What has happened up till then, today is the day, or this is the week. What you want to look at is total time invested. So if your sales cycle is 6 months and you're busy the whole 6 months, and you can reduce that to 4 months, then clearly that's goodness, okay? But everybody always makes the assumption that reducing it by 50% or by a third is goodness, and that may or may not be the case. For example, let's say you have an active period of 3 months where you're addressing awareness and discovery and their problem, and now maybe you're in a proof of concept. So you're actively selling for 3 months, and they need, say, 2 or 3 months for this thing to percolate or for them to try it out or whatever. And you might have a check-in period or something, but really you're not expending any calories. You're not using up any sales bandwidth during that time. It's time they need to complete the buyer's journey. And to try and compress that is really dismissing or discounting the buying process or the buyer's journey, which can get you in trouble, okay? So if you discover through analytics that, or simply keeping track, that providing that cushion, that buffer, actually is increasing win rates, and trying to compress that is driving win rates down, then as long as your total time is not being consumed during those second 3 months, it's not an issue, okay? With respect to time, now there are other reasons to want to compress the cycle, not the least of which is vulnerability from competitors coming in to snatch the deal during that quiet time. So I'm not saying that, the compressing cycle time doesn't matter. It does in terms of efficiency, total time invested. But the other reason to do that is to get it off the table, because as long as it's out there, you're vulnerable. And a competitor could sweep in at the 11th hour, so to speak, and snatch the deal away from you, or some other event could happen to deny this deal. And so that's an absolutely legitimate and valid and important reason to close it as soon as you can. But don't close it at the cost of offending or ignoring the buying process, okay? So that's one way of looking at time. And the other part of this equation is over D, which are distractions, which are corruptors of selling time, those things that pull people away from their selling activities. And if you want to know more about this entire equation, then be sure and check out our video on what to measure, okay? So that's one way of looking at time. The other thing I said at the beginning is we don't conceptualize time very well. I mean, you know, we get it, time passes by and so on, but in terms of really understanding its impact, I don't think, particularly in sales, I don't think we're very good at it. And here's a model that I've been using for a long time to present to folks to try and make this point. So here's a bridge that's exactly 1 mile long. It's exactly 1 mile. Okay? And you cross or traverse the first half of this bridge averaging 30 miles per hour. You've gone exactly half a mile. Okay? The question is, how fast do you need to go in the second half of the bridge to average 60 miles per hour crossing the bridge? And people go, oh man, I hate word problems. I never liked that stuff. And it's not that complicated. You'll see why in a second. Maybe you've already seen why. And it's not as complicated as my partner Jim Dickey always likes to start off with. A train leaves New York heading to Chicago going, no, it's not that one either. So here's the simple question. 1 mile, first half, 30 miles per hour. How fast do you need to go in the second half of the bridge to average 60 miles per hour? I think the universal reaction is, how about 90? So if you went 30 in the first half, you went 90 in the second half, there's your 60. But yeah, you know, he wouldn't be asking this if it was that obvious. So maybe it's like 120. Maybe if you went 4 times as fast in the second half. Nah, let's get crazy. How about if it was 480 miles per hour in the second half? Maybe that would do it. But the fact of the matter is that won't do it. And here's why. Okay, 60 miles per hour, it takes 1 minute to go 1 mile, right? A mile a minute, 60 miles an hour, okay? At 30 miles per hour, it takes 2 minutes to go 1 mile, and it takes 1 minute to go half a mile. Oops, time's up. You literally cannot go fast enough in the second half of the bridge to average 60 miles per hour unless you do an unnatural act. And an unnatural act in the physical world is going faster than the speed of light to make time go backwards, okay, which nobody's figured out how to do, thankfully. In a selling sense, in the sales world, an unnatural act is, wait for it, discounting. When you start running out of time, when everybody's familiar with a hockey stick at the end of period, end of quarter, and particularly end of year, we are out of time. And the lever that's reached for is discounting. Now, there are 2 parts to this. Number 1, get it done sooner. Do the work, okay, and recognize that time is important here. The second thing is, if you want to know more about the impact of discounting on margins and so on, watch our video, our sales math video on just that, the impact of discounting. Now, the final piece of this, and then we'll wrap it up, is a lot of times, and this thing, you know, as time is passing, if you've ever had a rep that seemed, you know, it's like, yeah, I know I'm behind right now, but in 90 days, I'm looking solid. I mean, I've got my pipeline here the deals are in pipeline, but it's like they've got a 90-day stick on their forehead. And 90 days from now, they're essentially where they were back then. Nothing's really changed. And they'll say, yeah, I know, I actually thought we were going to be there by now, but really we're solid and nothing's really changed. And, I've been checking in with them. We're all good. No competitors sneaking in the back door or whatever. But something has changed. You've turned over 3 more pages on the calendar, okay? You've burned up some time. You may not be further along, but time is further along in the passage. And that's what people don't get. They simply do not get until it's way too late that you can't do it. Now, if you're here and you realize we're only going 30 miles an hour, yeah, you can go 90. Or if you're here and you realize you're only going 30 miles an hour. Well, maybe you can put a jetpack on the car and get there. But once you've used up the time, you've used up the time. And I think today I've used up my time. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. Thanks for watching.